Jake, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Do you happen to speak Spanish?
No.
Okay.
Well, I had 3 years of honor Spanish in high school, and
Oh,
I've forgotten most of it.
so fluent. Got
But
it. Okay.
funny enough, if I say no, that could be taken as if I like that. Also means the same thing in Spanish, right? I remember that
Yeah,
one. No
exactly.
means
So
no.
that's what I'm saying.
Spanish
It sounds like you're fluent to me. So could you
might be.
take, because on the sheet of stuff we're supposed to be talking about today, this is word I just don't I don't know what it means, or like it sounds Spanish to me. So I'm curious if you
Okay.
could just like interpret. So what is this? Is the C word? What does that mean?
C word. I mean, we gotta be careful here, bro. There's a
Okay, the
there's
first one. The first.
oh. I was looking in the wrong spot. The outline.
The wrong Google Doc. Wrong Google Doc.
Is it car, card card cardio?
Cardio. Okay, yes,
Ah,
that one. Yeah. So apparently we're supposed to be talking about that today.
what is that?
I don't know. That's why I'm laughing. That's why it's. I guess. Okay, all jokes aside. Yep, we're talking about cardio. We love it. Smiley face, and we're also joking. We understand it's a very much a common thing in training in this whole fitness stuff. We laugh a little and we jest because as power lifters of the past and maybe still present. I know you were going down the line still, or maybe even the future. Who knows? We're of lifting enthusiasts. We naturally have to be in competition with cardio and people who like cardio. We're just enemies. That's just how it is. But we're here to unify those two people and to talk about it and to maybe talk about it through more of a practical lens of what it means for us at the training arc and us resistance training enthusiasts. But still important to talk about nonetheless, especially with it being basically summer. It got super hot here all of a sudden. Like it went up to 9 degrees
Oh
after
man.
being like 60. And it's supposed to be 60 next week, but we won't think about that. This is Fahrenheit, by the way, just in
I,
case you didn't know. So yeah, with summer around, with people summer shredding, cardio also comes up anytime we're talking about that, and how do we incorporate it? What does it mean? How does it help us with our goals? How can it maybe impede our goals, if it does even impede our goals? Because that does come up, and that's something we'll talk about. So here we are talking about cardio and thoughts. Where do we start? What is cardio? How do we define it?
yeah.
Por qué?
Maybe, maybe that's a good.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember any other Spanish things that I remember. I remember bienvenidos.
Okay, yeah.
Um, I remember chicle and la basura because my teacher would yell at me every day because she didn't want us to chew gum in class.
Okay.
So she would literally every day I would try to get away with it, and she made me go throw it away. Um, or she would say K a lot because the point of the class was like immersion. So you
Hmm.
couldn't,
You
every
couldn't.
single thing had to be in Spanish. And if you asked a question in English, she would act like she didn't understand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which was great for learning, but unbelievably frustrating as like a freshman, right? When I didn't know anything. I was like, I want to go to the bathroom. I don't know how to ask this. Like, I need to pee, dude. Like, I can't. But anyway, yeah. So I'll try to remember any other words as we go through. Cardio. What does cardio mean? I think we would probably both agree it can mean a lot of things, right? Maybe the most broad definition might just be like, you know, yeah, well, certainly you could define it as like cardiovascular exercise and trying to get certain adaptations, but in the context of body composition changes, then I think we could define it even more generally of just it's basically just like planned activity, right? Like it's not when you got to go buy groceries, like walking around the grocery store, I wouldn't necessarily count as cardio. But if you go take purposeful brisk walks, or you get on the treadmill or the elliptical or recumbent bike or rower, whatever. That's how I tend to think about it in this context anyway, is just planned activity for the purpose of burning calories and moving the needle, in a fat loss phase a little bit more, or even, it's as horrible as this might sound to some people, you can include this in your gaining phase as well. It's probably not the worst possible idea to be a little healthier as we gain some weight, and can also help you eat a tiny bit more, which can be nice for people like me who gain weight on way less calories than they would like. so it can help free up some flexibility with the diet, right? That's how I tend to think about it.
Mhm.
But you?
Yeah, no, it's yeah. I think, like you said, it can mean so many things. So there's no inherently right answer. But I think the reason why we bring that up is because depending on how you define it and what your goal is, the execution is going to be different too. So whatever it is means to you, you know, make sure you define that for yourself, and then you have your pathway for that. But like you said, we're going to focus mainly on just the body composition side of things, what that means, how it affects our lifting, because we care very much about our lifting and our body composition for powerlifters and bodybuilders and the like. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're going to be focusing on there. But yeah, I would agree. All that stuff there is basically just non-lifting activity. As simple as I would put it, right? Just like yeah, if I'm not
Go.
lifting, if I'm doing something else, going for the walks, it's mainly walks for me and in general when I talk about it. So it ends up being step count. Hey, what's your step count now? What's that? Cool. Are you doing anything in addition to like tracking step count? Like, are you hopping on the treadmill, which still affects tread count? But are you more purposeful about that? Maybe going a little bit more intense, or are you hopping on the bike where you don't get step count, but it's still activity, right? So non-resistance training activity is typically how I will think of it.
You gotta just put that the Fitbit or the whatever watch thing, just put it in your pocket or something so it picks up those steps also.
Rookie move, put it on a dog and just throw the ball, and then put it
That's true.
online and show people how active you are.
That's true.
That's how you do it.
That's true.
So,
Coach, why am I not losing weight? I'm getting 20,000 steps.
so yeah, right. And so yeah, if you're looking for advice of how to maximize your VO2, that's where we say, okay. So
Exactly.
that was good. That was good. So yeah, not going to talk about that here. We can maybe in the future. Maybe oh god, my life. But I think we're going to focus mainly on hey, what does it mean for resistance training, body composition, things that come into play. So yeah, I think the first thing that comes up, like we said, is we hear the word cardio and we're scared. Like this whole intro has been like, dude, what is that? I kind of just hear like my heart rate's going up thinking about it. Like, is that bad? Should I be concerned? But it's a lot of times we hear about, hey, cardio is going to kill your gains, and I think we should talk about that. Is that true? What does that mean? Is there a word for it? Like, what should we be scared about? Is it cardio or is it just existence? What do we got?
I mean, we should be scared of existence. And it's also true that it's going to ruin your gains. Your legs will completely just melt away as soon as you do any cardio. I mean, look at all these contest prep bodybuilders out here with their tiny chicken legs. Like, clearly, this is just the worst possible thing you can do, right?
You don't need to convince me. I'm not doing cardio either way. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, or like, man, don't those sprinters and cyclists have such tiny legs? Like, clearly, this is just, no muscle growth can happen whatsoever. But jokes aside, it's a valid concern, right? People are like, we work so hard in the gym, and leg day can be, I think the more advanced we get, the more grueling it becomes. And the last thing that we want is for any of that hard work to go unrewarded, right? So I totally get it. And I have had in the past and still to an extent, like it still enters your brain. Like we get so programmed from some of those initial things that we hear when we're just getting into it. And it's hard to push those thoughts away. Like even though we might, learn better in some circumstances, like those thoughts can still be there. But, we're talking about the interference effect, quote unquote, right? Where doing cardio might interfere with the hypertrophy gains or the strength gains also, right? That just this concern of does doing this thing make my time in the gym either not worth it at all or at least less worth it, that maybe it doesn't, as I was sort of joking about, completely negate what you did in the gym. Maybe it just decreases it a little bit and that's just not worth it to them. And there are some directions that we could go with this, I think, right? Like there's some research on this. There is just a lot of coaching experience behind this, right? Both us as coaches, but just in general in the industry. Like contest prep has been a thing for a long time, and cardio is an integral part of that for most people. Some people can get away without doing any, but most people find it worth the trade-off to do some. And so people have been talking about this. It's been a conversation ongoing for a very, very long time. So there's a lot of various forms of evidence that we can kind of look at. And I guess, where do you think makes sense to start? Do you think it makes sense to start maybe more mechanistic, researchy kind of stuff, or do you want to start with the coaching, hands-on stuff, and kind of work backwards? Do you have a vision?
Yeah, I think starting just said that kind of the mechanistic research and like what's there, because we won't spend too much time there because we can go super in depth and then it gets kind of boring, to be honest. But
Or me.
yeah, exactly. So I think just starting there is the interference effect does exist, but it's not as scary as people think, and it's pretty easy to maneuver. So we'll get to the maneuvering part later. But in terms of it existing, what it essentially comes down to is that there's just competing pathways that happen, right? It's if I recall correctly, it's the mTOR pathway and the AMPK pathway. So the lifting pathway and the cardio pathway, right? They essentially cannot be going at the same time. They're going to be competing. So if you're trying to do lifting and then you're also trying to do the cardio side of things in close proximity, again, we'll talk more about that a little bit later. The closer that they happen, or the more immediate that they are within one another, the more likely it is going to occur, right? So as soon as, say, you just finish lifting and then you go ahead and do some maybe sprints or some long distance duration stuff, you're going to start seeing some competition there. So I think the fact that it does exist is important to acknowledge. But again, it's just really easy to maneuver. And we don't need to get so caught up in how or why. Just say, hey, like, what does that mean for me? So again, maybe if you are someone who wants more in depth, then down the line we can talk about it. But here specifically in terms of how we navigate that and how it is easy to maneuver, I think it's important to just remember kind of that saying we always talk about is that the devil is in the dose, right? And that comes into play a lot here. When it comes to putting things, your resistance training and your cardio within your whole program, the biggest thing is going to be how close they are, like you said earlier, right? So if you're doing things back to back, that then there's going to be a greater chance that things will occur. The more time you give between them, the less likely that is to occur. And again, more time, even less likely. So that could be a couple hours, that can be days. But if you want to be more on the safe side, you take longer time. You want to be, you can't be on the safe side because of practicality of things. Sure, there's other ways we can approach it. But I think knowing those basics can be super helpful, because then when you're looking at designing your week of training, you're like, okay, make sure to space things as much as I can. I can do that. Make sure things aren't as intense. Like my super intense leg day is not next to my super intense aerobic day, right? Because intensity matters too. So devil and dose not only for timing, but the duration, the intensity, all those things. So we can go so many different rabbit holes there, but I think knowing those things is important. And when I talk about that, what comes up to your mind? Like, what are you thinking of, like how you're going to put those around and navigate, and other more practical things, like you said, from our coaching experience comes into play?
Yeah, that's great. And I think one thing also, just to underscore what you're saying about the dose, is there's been a fair amount of research on this, right? And like what they call concurrent training. So just usually these studies will compare people, at least the ones most relevant to this question. It's a group of participants that are only resistance training, and then another group that are doing resistance training and cardio, right? And the tricky part is that can be configured in a lot of different ways. It could be different sessions. It could be cardio then lifting. It can be lifting then cardio. It can be all sorts of stuff, different intensities, different durations. So that gets kind of tricky. And I dream of a day where we can have a really, really cool meta regression that can tease those things apart even more. Maybe that's a good to do that. I don't want to do that.
Are you going to participate?
I don't want to do that. But the most recent meta-analysis that we have on these, there's the most recent one, and glimpse behind the curtain, I actually pulled up a couple notes that I took down on these when it came out, because I want to make sure I get this. I don't botch this because it's been a minute since I looked at this. But 2024, I think it was towards the end of the year, if I remember correctly. It was like Hubert's was the name, the lead author, and they were essentially finding that there wasn't really much difference between lifting only and concurrent training for muscle growth or upper body strength, but there was a negative impact on lower body strength. And the sort of the catch a little bit, which kind of makes sense if we think about it, right? Most cardio people are doing in studies is like lower body based. So if it's going to impact something, it's probably going to be lower body. But the catch with this, with muscle growth, is they only had like 5 studies they included in their that just fit their inclusion criteria. But if we go back a few years ago, I think it's 2022, there was one that had like 20 or 25 studies, if I remember correctly. So just a lot more power there. And because they had more power, they were able to separate things out by the intensity. So like you were mentioning, this matters, that dose, that this is really cool. It just gives us more direct evidence of that like moderate intensity, low intensity doesn't seem to really do a whole lot. But if you do nothing significant, if you do high intensity, that's when we start to see maybe a little bit of an impact there with less hypertrophy that can be happening. So to me, that's really cool research that kind of confirms what makes sense logically. And like you're saying, some of the uh, deeper metabolic stuff, that if the dose is, if there's a certain dose that, like, yes, we can make something negative happen, right? If you do really high intensity cardio, especially like right before your leg day or something, probably not the best idea. But there's a lot of ways to avoid that, like you said. So what I've what I've done with myself and with clients and stuff is like, obviously if we're not doing a ton of cardio, it's really easy because you can just say like, all right, well, you had a day off from the gym, maybe we put it there. Or you don't want to go to the gym that day, okay, let's put it after an upper body day. Or maybe you have maybe you're doing like a push pull legs setup or something, so you put it on that push day, so then you have even another rest day before you go to the lower body, whatever. So there's all kinds of things like that. But where it gets complicated with where you put it is when someone has to do a lot of cardio, like in a contest prep. Like for me, it was literally every day. So then it sort of becomes like, well, what's the lesser evil? Do I want to do it in a different, do I want to do 2 days basically? Do I want to do, lifting first and then cardio? Do I want to do cardio first and then lift? And, so there's a lot of things to think about, I think, when you get into that scenario. But the other thing I do want to emphasize is on that point about the intensity. If the intensity is lower, it's probably not a big deal, right? And the we have a lot of flexibility with how we program that also. So like I think about it like a spectrum. Like high intensity is you for a certain number, let's say 100 calories burned, it takes a certain amount of time, much less time. Low intensity, to burn that same number of calories, takes a lot more time, but it's way easier on your body, way less fatiguing, right? Sometimes you can multitask. If you're me, you watch an episode of an anime, or you read a chapter of your ebook or whatever. Maybe whatever you like to do, but you can use that time to do other things. And maybe you find that the high intensity stuff just, hurts your knees, or it does whatever. So like you can play with where you're at in that spectrum, and really change things to suit a person's just very individual circumstances. And maybe their hip just hurts all the time. It's like, all right, well, we're not going to run outside then. That doesn't make sense. Or maybe the weather is a bummer. That doesn't make sense. So we got to do it at the gym. You're not going to do 2 days realistically. So like, let's do it just after you train, and let's do a modality that doesn't hurt your body and keep the intensity a little lower, right? Whereas other people, maybe they don't need that much cardio. Maybe their gym is a 5-minute walk away, so they can go do 2 days, or they love running outside. Cool, you can do that. So everybody's different, but I think that that's such a huge thing with this, is just having that toolbox of, we have all these different ways we can accomplish what we want, and we just want to see what combination of those suits that person in that time. Like sometimes it's going to change just within the same person over different periods of their life. It's going to kind of change. So I've been rambling for a while. Let me kick it back to you. See what you think.
Not a ramble at all. It was all super informative and helpful. And yeah, I agree pretty much all the way. And I think yet again, context is king comes
Always.
into play. It really is. And it's not that we just repeat that every single time. We say it because it is true. Because like you said, it just depends on what the job needs to be done. But of course, we're going to give you some tools for each job, and that's why we're here. But I think, yeah, on the note of high intensity, like it's often just not used because, as you had said, it just comes at higher cost. It's not that we have something against it or we think it's inefficient. It's just that we have to think a lot more, which isn't bad, but we're bodybuilders. Remember, we don't want to think. We want to do. So it's jokingly, but also, yes, if I have to be so concerned with my recovery because I'm introducing a high intensity cardio stuff, that's gonna be, one, require more effort from me. Two, I'm gonna have to be mindful of my lower body stuff. Is it gonna subconsciously affect me because I'm thinking it? Not even just like actually physiological differences. Is it actually just gonna mess me up mentally? Because I'm like, oh no, I got sprints coming up tomorrow, or I have to do high intensity walking on the stairs, whatever it is. That could throw you off too, right? So I think more often than not, when the goal is body composition change or general health or general resistance training combinedness with cardio, it's going to be low intensity most of the time, and then maybe some moderate intensity. And with the moderate intensity, at least for me and my approach, mainly comes in when we need to kick things up a little bit for aiding that energy balance, i.e., mainly if you're in a, contest prep, or you're in a deficit and maybe slashing food or taking away more food isn't feasible right now because maybe we're at lower calories and we don't want to do that and make it harder for you to make smart choices with nutrition. So we can add in a little bit more cardio, right? You start playing this pull and push game of how am I manipulating my energy balance? Is it food? Is it cardio? Is it a combination of the two? And at what costs do both of those come into play? And again, that's where some thinking, some discussion with yourself, with your coach comes into play, knowing, okay, what's going to be the right choice? Or what's the choice I need to make to get me to my goal? And how am I willing to get there? Because like you said, right, when you're in prep, man, you just got to do it. Do you want to slash your calories and add in cardio? No, but you're probably going to do it if the goal is important to you and you want to get there, right? So you're going to sacrifice a little bit. But not everyone is in a contest prep. Not everyone wants to get that lean. Not everyone needs to do those things, right? So that's where, again, just thinking about that goes a long way. But yeah, more often than not, high intensity, just a lot to think about. And again, maybe me coming from the bias of recovery stuff in program design within the week, but you brought that up too. And I think that just, again, kind of makes sense, right? Knowing that, hey, resistance training is most important to me. Is this going to affect my resistance training? That's a question you're going to ask yourself a lot. And it could be vice versa. Again, my main goal is X. Does Y affect X negatively? Yes or no? You go through this more flow chart of then, okay, what does my decision mean? Right? Because if your main goal was cardio, for example, then you probably do your cardio stuff first because you don't want the resistance training to get in the way or negatively affect your cardio stuff. Because we're prioritizing stuff. We're, focusing on the principle of specificity, doing things specific to the goal and making choices specific that line up with that too, and hitting these exercises or these sessions when we're most fresh, because then we're able to produce the best quality of work that we can. Right. So again, you're going to be asking yourself these questions. You're going to be thinking about those things and always falling in line with how does it affect that goal. So most of the time, maybe not high intensity, moderate. We have room to sprinkle it in there. We can, but more often than not, it's just go for some walks, dude. Just go get the step count up, because like you said, you can pair it with other activities. That's probably my favorite thing about it, is you can pair it with other things. One, because that means you could do other things too and enjoy other things, and now you have so much more time because you're like, man, I can watch anime while going up to get my step count up. That's great. When you start pairing these habits, you're more likely to do it. Nowadays, if I'm like, God, man, I gotta get my 3,000 steps in, I'm like, no, that's an episode of anime right there. I'm not even thinking about it from a perspective of I have to do cardio or I have to do steps. It's, oh, I get to watch anime. Of course, I'm going to do that, right? Or and it doesn't have to be anime. We're just biased, of course, because it's the training arc.
It
But it
does have
could
to be
be
anime. Come on.
okay. It does. It does. If you're not watching anime, you must do it now. If not, then what are you doing? What are you doing?
Why are you here?
Stay here, please. We love having you here. But maybe watch anime too. But yeah, you can pair it with so much other things, and the other, like walking with your partner, with your family, with your friends. They can get them involved too, and there's so many things you can pair it with to make it more enjoyable, more feasible, and that's what we talk about: adherence, enjoyment. Those are things that matter. So that's how we're trying to quote unquote maybe sneak it in, but it's not sneaking in because it is intentional about it, and it's a win-win. And then there's also situations where it's easier, and you kind of alluded to this, where if you have to walk to the gym, or I always give the example when I was in New Zealand and I was walking everywhere, getting 20,000 steps was the norm for me. I didn't have to try. I was walking to school, which is 45 minutes away, and walking back, or I'm walking around the lab so much, or a combination of all of that, and that was the norm. But then when I came back home to Rhode Island, it's like I was barely getting 6,000 steps. I had to be intentional about that. Like, oh damn, I gotta, because it's snowing here, it's cold, right? So there's these things that also come into play of, yes, we understand mechanisms, but what about practicality? What about the feasibility? How does it in line with the goals? What else comes with that, right? Because everything comes at a cost, and that's where that cost benefit analysis comes into play a little bit more here, and not only just energy wise, but time wise, all these things that can come into play. But yeah.
That's great stuff. I'm glad that you brought in the push and pull of nutrition versus cardio versus the combination. Like we're talking about cardio, but it's kind of hard to not bring in nutrition a little bit because they are so tied together with body comp stuff that it's really just two sides of the same coin to control that energy balance equation. And you can. I agree with everything that you said, and I think that there, as a general statement, I think it's a very good idea to start with just low intensity stuff, walks, maybe, I mean, you can get on a machine if you want to, just, don't go super crazy on it, because you can always dial it up, right? That's what I always try to think about. It's so much easier to add more than it is to jump in, you come in too hot, you build you dig yourself into a hole of fatigue, and now you got to unbury it, and you got to deload early, and it's just it's a mess. So it's not that bad. Like it's okay, right? But nonetheless, it's easier.
But it could be bad for some people. Because if you say,
Yeah.
if you have someone who gets 4,000 steps normally, and you're like, bro, you need to get 10,000 steps because apparently that's the number nowadays. Maybe no, you're just saying that because everyone's saying that. They go get 10,000 steps. The next day, they feel terrible because they're not used to getting 10,000 steps. Now in their mind, they're like, walking is terrible or being active is terrible.
True.
That's a huge disservice to them.
Yeah.
So sometimes it does. I'm not saying that you were wrong, by the way. I'm just saying
That's a great point, though.
there's things to. That's why that's just another reason why easing into it is important, because you don't want to negatively push someone back. And the same thing can be said for resistance training. You can make someone sore so easily, but that's not the goal. Imagine you remember your first leg day. You never wanted to hit legs again, and that's why a lot of people don't hit legs anymore. It's because they're
Yeah.
like, bro, that sucked.
On, on that note, what's really funny, I haven't trained my traps directly in, it's been a minute. I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, something like that. So I did. I started back in here. Actually, yesterday was the first time I'd done it in a long time, and I did 2 sets, and they were like, I don't know, 3 to 5 RIR, something like that. I was like, okay, I'm easing in. It's fine, dude. I can't even take a drink of water without my traps feeling like they're gonna cramp up. It's crazy. So like on that note, if this was my first experience, never, like, I don't want to do that ever again, right? So that's a great point.
I have a story too. That's a
Okay.
similar story, but like it probably worse. Not saying yours was not bad, but dude, it was bad. I was back at FAU and I was teaching tactical strength and conditioning, and we had an army officer come in and they took the class through like an actual full on thing. And one of the ones was doing like dead bug shuffles up and down a football field. So like all
What?
core rotation and everything. Yeah, and if I'm helping teach it, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna do all this stuff too. But nobody else was doing this one. So like, well, I got to lead by example because that's what I do, dude. I normally don't train abs that much to begin with, and at that point, I probably wasn't at all. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't sneeze. I couldn't rotate to talk for like 10 days. It was so painful. Would I don't regret it though because it was funny and it was fun. And I'm
Respect.
probably stubborn too, but that's, dude. Like, I mean, imagine again, like you said, if that's your introduction to it, you go all out. And you don't want to do that. No, it doesn't. You got to keep people excited about it. So same thing with the cardio activity. Just make it enjoyable, make it simple, and bring it back to that goal. Yeah.
I think I have 2 other thoughts I want to bring up. One is, once you do that stuff, right? Or and you're gaining some experience, you start to learn your preferences, what fits in your schedule, what you fatigue most from, right? You learn your body, and you can start to kind of tweak things, right? Or like as a coach, you learn a client, you're able to do some stuff that maybe you wouldn't start a beginner with, but you can do, So like for instance, I've had stuff where we want to do a diet. Like, okay, they've done a handful of diets before, right? They know how to do it. They know how to track. They know how to manage their hunger and fullness. They know how to do all this stuff. And so like we could go really nice and slow and small deficit, low, just get some step count stuff and be done in 12, 16 weeks, whatever. Or we can just kind of go blast it out for like 8 weeks and be done. And maybe there's somebody who they would much rather do that than feel restricted for so long, right? They would rather just higher intensity but less duration of the diet in that sense. So like you can totally do so. I wouldn't do that your first time necessarily, right? You got to build some skills, but like you can totally. It's not even breaking the rules. It's just a different application of the variables, and then it's like I just want to get that out that I'm not saying that you always have, or neither of us are saying you always need to do low intensity. It's just start there, modulate as you go.
To give a very relevant example of that for myself, it's been 9 weeks of prep, and I'm trying to be as ahead of schedule as I can. rate of loss has gotten a lot slower the past couple of weeks. So in my mind, because we're still ahead, I'm like 20 weeks out, maybe for my first show, maybe 22 for the first one, depending on how it goes. I'm like, hey, I would rather push now while there's less diet fatigue and I've been in it longer than have to, so I can be ahead, so I can take my diet break for a week or two, so I then can push harder for my second bout of dieting when I am a lot leaner and agitated, all this other stuff. So sometimes, like you said, that's a very possible thing. Would I I wouldn't tell everyone to do that. No one really, not everyone has that long term vision, or not everyone's ready for that, right?
Sure.
And hey, maybe I might bite myself in the ass later. But okay, I should not have done that. Like I messed up. But like that's one way that you kind of look at it is, hey, let's try to be as early as we can. If not, that's fine, because then we're just going to be on schedule still, right? So
Yeah,
there's many applications of it, but just to kind of give an example of like, yeah, sometimes
totally.
it's okay to think about that. That's what I'm
Yeah,
going through.
absolutely. It's a great point. And then I think the other thing I want to throw out that this helped me a lot when I was in prep, and I'm trying to stick with it. And that's like just say yes to more things. So like I typically I'm not going to go take walks outside very much, if at all. Right? I'm in Florida. It's hot. If it's not hot, it's raining or it's humid or both. And I don't want to deal with it. And like I would rather just get more work done or just relax or whatever. But my girlfriend loves taking walks outside, which means she often will be like, "Hey, do you want to go take a walk?" And so when I started prep, my rule to myself was if she asked me that, I will always say yes because it's like bonus steps in a sense, right? Um, so you can do some things like that, or like, um, you're gonna hang out with a friend, and it's like, hey, we could go see a movie, or we could go mini golf, or we could go whatever. And like one of them is slightly more active than the other. So it's like, say yes to the thing, right? Kind of let yourself be put into more of those situations where you can get that slightly more calorie burn or whatever. It's not going to make a massive difference, but they add up, right? It really does. And it can make a big difference in the long run. So that was a rule that I found very helpful for myself that I think can probably help some other.
Very similar on that front. It's like and I've been having to do this. Or I'm planning to having to do this because I can foresee this being something I need to do in the future. Is instead of going out to eat with people, say, hey, let's go for the walk. Instead,
Yeah.
like making
Yeah.
activities. Because don't get me wrong, I understand completely why food is a centralizing activity, and I love that fact. I 100% do. But and this is a little bit selfish, but sometimes it makes it harder for me because I need to be aware of that. And hey, like, am I gonna be able to say no to this food, or do I have to be that guy? Like, hey, sorry, like I'm gonna bring my Tupperware, or I'm gonna eat beforehand and show up, and I still want to show up. Some sacrifices have to be made. I don't think it's inherently selfish all the time, but I think that's something you still need to be aware of and at least vocalize to the people so that everyone understands. Right? You just don't say no just because you're like, well, I'm not going because I'm prepping.
Right.
I'd rather not do that. And instead, hey, let me propose some solutions. I could still show up, but maybe I'll just eat before because I just want to hang out with you guys. It's cool. Or, hey, instead of going out to food, let's go for that walk. Let's go to that hike in the woods that we saw. That was a cool place to go to. Like, it's great weather outside. Those are some options too that you can kind of do. So, kind of again, putting it into the realism side of things. Of there's some options that you can make it do, and just kind of replacing some things or swapping some things, or like I said, saying yes to more things, which is always a good idea. So.
I love that, and that also kind of gets at some of the like psychological stuff
Mm.
too. That you're pairing it with an activity that you really enjoy, right? And you mentioned that with like anime earlier. That like it sounds a little silly sometimes when you say the anime version, but like it's the same thing as like doing it with friends or when you make a phone call or whatever. That you have a more positive association with it, which is so important, especially if you're doing a long diet, especially a prep. That like your brain does not want to do all that cardio, right? And it's time consuming, it's tiring. You just don't want to do it. But you got to do it to get to the goal. So it's like, how do I get myself to do the thing I need to do? And I think that's another application. Like for me, I ended up doing uh it was 60 minutes 6 times a week. And one of those, what I wound up doing is I took one of them and split it into two halves. So what my setup ended up being, my 2 leg days, I did 30 minutes before the session, actually, because it was a low enough intensity that way that it sort of doubled as a warm up and getting my body ready. So like that worked. And then the other 6 days of the week, the other 5 days of the week, I was doing an hour. And that was at like a moderate intensity. if I was trying to do a low intensity, I'm going to be there twice as long. Like, no way. I would much rather get after it a little bit more and be done a little bit sooner. But high intensity stuff I know is equally unsustainable because it's just going to beat me up and I'm going to hate it and not want to do it. And I'm moving around too much, so I'm not going to be able to watch a show or whatever. So like you got to find those sweet spots that align with how your psychology works and what will allow you to be successful. And like we talk about this, it's another cliche, but it's so true. Like that adherence is number one, right? You got to be able to stick to the plan, and you got to sometimes experiment and figure out what actually enables you to do that.
I'm so glad you brought that part up because I recently made a post about this where like sometimes I just walk up and down my hallway,
Yeah,
and my hallway is only like 13 steps in one direction. But
I
if
don't know
I,
how you do that.
it it's funny because it sounds extremely crazy, and it probably is. But like so many times where I just get my 10,000 steps or 12,000 steps, what it is, just by like accumulation over the day of 500 here. Or like what I do is if I'm working, I like to put a Pomodoro timer on or some just timer like 25 minutes of work, a 5 minute break. During that 5 minute break, just go walk up and down. I can be scrolling on my phone. That's another thing where it's like I'm only scrolling on my phone or replying to messages on Instagram if I am walking, rather than laying in bed and just rotting all the time. Right? If you put something like that to it, like you said, that's helpful. But you can't underestimate how much the little stuff adds up, including the small steps. You go out somewhere, go to a grocery store, park farther away. Those steps add up. Right? It really does, right? So take an extra lap around the food source, make sure you got everything you wanted, or those things do make a difference. So if something as daunting as a 60-minute session of cardio is staring at you, how likely are you to do that? I'm not saying there's a yes or no answer. That's something you just need to think about. How likely are you, based on your context, your enjoyment, your all this stuff? How likely are you able to do this? If you're staring at something and it's too daunting, break it up. Two 30-minute sessions, three 20-minute sessions, 10 6-minute sessions. Like it's the same at the end of the day, but it seems so simple. It does, but it adds up. A lot of times we think it needs to be a certain way, but it really doesn't. And especially true for step count. Like, dude, it really doesn't matter. That's why, like, up in between sets at the gym, I'm just walking around. I get 3,000 to 4,000 steps just by walking around the gym in between my sessions. And what else would I be doing in between that? Scrolling on my phone. If I'm talking to someone cool, I don't mind that because talking to people is important to me. But like, other than that, I'm just writing in my notebook how I feel, and then I just go walk around. And I sing and listen to anime music, and people think I'm weird again. But that's cool because I'm weird.
I love that. That's I wouldn't be able to walk up and down my hallway like that, but it just that's such a perfect example of how different people are just different, and like to you, what feels good and
Thank you
sustainable
for
and
saying
helps you.
different, by the way, not weird. Thank
Yeah.
you.
That like what helps you be successful is different from what might help me be successful or somebody else or whatever. And it's all this is why another example why research is never going to tell you exactly what to do, why there's no perfect program, why there's no anything, right? It's just there's these big picture ideas like we're trying to lose some weight, so we need to influence our energy balance, and cardio is one of those options, but there's a million ways to do it. And so now we need to figure out, well, what's going to help us achieve a certain deficit more or less consistently. And you know what I mean? Like, and we're fitting all the pieces together, like we've kind of talked through, and what feels good and sustainable psychologically, and what's just realistic logistically. And like, there's so much stuff. Can you pair it with things to have a more positive association with? There's so many things. So like, everyone's setup is going to look a little bit different, which is so cool. And I don't know, embrace it, right? It's awesome. The one thing we should all do though, no matter what, is fasted cardio. That's by far the best. And it will magically, it only targets your abs, by the way. The
Give me a
fat will
sec.
stay
I'm
as
just
well, but you'll get shredded abs. That's how
give
it
me a
works.
sec. Let me just delete all of the history of the training hour. I can't believe you just said that. How did like what?
You haven't heard this?
I have, and it gets under my skin. It bothers me. That's what you said. But dude, it's so common. It really is. And I joke around too, but I think it does bother me a little bit because of the things that we said before. If you're telling someone you need to do this, and especially you're putting it behind something as daunting as like say fasted cardio, that's that bothers me because again, like you could be instilling some very bad habits or a very bad relationship of how they're viewing their health, viewing cardio, viewing training, all these things, right? If you're saying you need to do something, anything, okay, that you shouldn't be saying that. And then you talk about cardio, something we both hate. That's even more so. Like, hey, what's that? But it is very common. So basically, if you haven't heard, a lot of times people say you need to do fasted cardio because when you're fasted, you have no food in you, so your body is just gonna use the fat and burn all the fat away. There is some truth to that, but here's the thing: what the correct me if I'm wrong too, because I haven't seen it in a while. But what I remember reading in the research is your body will utilize fat during these times where you don't have carbohydrates available. So yes, you're utilizing fat as energy, but that does not necessarily mean, and most likely does not mean that you are overall losing total body fat because of that. What causes that is that, calories in versus calories out thing down the line. So yes, while in the intermediate, in the short term, you might be utilizing the fat, it doesn't mean you're losing more total fat for this body composition goal that we have. Is that
Yeah, I think
correct?
that's right. Yeah, it's like you more or less like you're using more fat during the cardio, but you'll just use less later
Yes,
and
yeah,
more
it's like
carbs once
that.
you actually eat the carbs.
Yes, yeah.
And then, you know, but I love how you led that with the psychology piece
Mm.
because like that's so huge. Like, what better way to make us feel good about doing something we hate than to pair it with something else that we hate? Like that doesn't make sense. I hate not eating, right? Um, so why are we doing them both at the same time? And to be fair, some people love this and it helps them be successful, and that's amazing, right? So it's not that we're saying you shouldn't do it. It's just we're saying let's not make it out as if that is by far the best thing. Um, Everything that you said spot on, and then it's like it makes people think that there's this thing that's the best,
Yeah,
and just nothing in fitness is that way, right? And so I think we both talk about this all the time. It's so good to encourage learning the concepts and learning the big picture stuff that you can apply to every scenario. That if you just learn fasted cardio is good, that's not helpful, right? Because if you can't do it, now you feel like a failure and like you're never going to reach your body composition goals and all that. That's a bummer. We don't want that. So yeah, it's not that it's bad. It's just maybe the way that it's framed in the popular media is maybe not always the most beneficial.
yeah. No, it's. I think I feel more strong about it because I just think I've been seeing it a little bit more now. I'm getting more into the bodybuilding realm. I've seen, and this is not anyone specific. It's just in general because you ask people, hey, like, what are you doing? What do you like? How are you approaching this prep? And when you hear people whose coaches are telling them, yeah, you need to do fasted cardio, and you're like, well, hey, I have a treadmill in my basement. Can I just walk on that? No, you need to go do fasted cardio on a stairmaster because that is also better. So then you're going to make them get a whole new gym membership just to go do fasted cardio in the morning, just because. Like that bothers me. If that's, I'm not saying again, not saying this happened or happened. It's just like if that is something that people are coming face to face with, like that hurts me as a coach, as a human. I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, don't say those things, right? You could present them as options and potential rationale as to why or why not one would want to do that. But saying something so strongly with no evidence and it can be potentially damaging is hurts my feelings. So if anything, don't do it because it hurts my feelings,
Yeah, we don't want
right?
that. We don't want that. And like again, I think about you know, if my brain was online first thing in the morning to where I wanted to exercise, which it's not, but like I typically don't get hungry until I've been up for 2-3 hours. And so like if I felt energetic and inspired to go exercise, like what a great way for me to get some calories burned. And typically most people find that like while you're exercising, your hunger signaling is decreased. And like that's a good way to stave off some of that. Like maybe you start feeling a little bit like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. Let me go do something to stay busy because I don't want to eat yet because then that means I have less food the rest of the day. Like that becomes a reality when you're in a deep diet like that sometimes. So I can totally see that purpose, right? Like it's there absolutely are use cases for it that are great. It's just not like the magical, like when you zoom out and look at the actual outcomes of fat loss, it just doesn't matter that much, right? Like just the people that it does matter for is probably because they like it and they're able to be consistent and they stick with it.
or in a, like you said, if it's in the morning, it chains multiple habits to come. Because if you tick a box
Yeah.
early in the morning like that, that's
Yeah.
important to a main goal. 100%. Again, I'm not shaming people training in the morning or cardio in the morning, any of that. Like, so I'm glad that you brought that up too, and I just want to clarify as well. But yeah, it's a lot of times people will promote that idea of just going out and getting some sunshine in the morning. So pairing sunshine plus walking plus potentially listening to a podcast or listening to music, walking with a loved one, plus just the endorphins from walking plus sunshine plus loved one. Like, you can pair so many things and just start this chain reaction of a lot of great stuff to come. So if that's the case, 100%. Like,
Question on
that's,
that.
yes.
Don't I also need to stare directly into the sun for a few minutes? Isn't that part of the morning routine?
It has to be, yep, eyes wide open, direct sunning. And that's mainly after you soak your face in this ice cold glacier water strictly from the glacier Mount Fuji within at least 10 hours. Because if it's like after 10 hours, then it starts to become less
Oh,
potent. So you got to make that.
got
That
it.
people always forget that, dude. It's like, imagine putting
So stupid.
11-hour water from Fiji water on.
People are so dumb.
What are
How
you
could they not get
doing?
that?
What are
Come
you
on.
doing?
How do you not
Uh,
know this? Is this before or after the perineum sunning?
So another great question. It has to be after. So it's perineum sunning,
Okay.
water in the face, then go outside. Because if you start to put that order, then you get the interference effect that happens there, where you start interfering with your own brain cells, like I
It's
am right now. Because, dude, what are we talking
got
about?
it. It's a bottom up approach, you might
It's,
say.
oh god, I love how this whole cardio episode has just been memes because it's cardio, so it falls in line.
Cardio itself is a
It's,
meme.
it is. If that's the biggest
No,
takeaway, then
it's
just kidding. We
cardio is
got a
great.
lot of good stuff in there. We
Cardio
got a
is
lot of good stuff in there. Yeah. So I think the one thing that maybe we forgot to talk about is, like, one, cardio is still beneficial. We joke about it. It's important for overall health. We're not saying it's not, but we're strictly talking mainly in the context of body composition changes with in composition or in conjunction with training and resist training specifically, right? So we're focusing on that. So people who are maybe more cardio focused probably hate us, and that's okay because we can have different viewpoints. It's fine. But I think one thing that might not be talked about for benefits of cardio, or why maybe you want to do it, is if you're noticing that your limiting factor in a specific exercise is your cardiovascular ability, maybe a reason to start doing that some too, right? If you're doing high rep sets of squats and you're noticing, like, I just can't breathe, rather
yeah.
than my quads are fatiguing if I want it to be a quad focused squat, or my velocity is going down more than it should be. If it is the limiting factor, you should probably address that too, because again, you're just not on the right path for that specific goal in that case. So I think that sometimes people, I do think it's minor. I don't see that often where I'm like, damn, you suck with squats, let's give you some cardio.
Right.
It's more of like, hey, if that's happening, and maybe we can get our step count up because it'll just be helpful for general health, plus maybe even recovery, plus we can pair it with all these other things, and that's also a side benefit that occurs because of that. For sure, we'll take it. Other than that, maybe it's like just get better at cardio with squats, because you start doing that more often, you'll get accustomed to it,
Sure.
right? So it's not that it's inherently specifically something we want to do, but that's something that has come up in the past before, and something that is talked about when the memes of cardio and powerlifters come into play, or strength enthusiasts, not just powerlifters. But
Sure. I mean,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's truth to it. Like that, like I've certainly had that experience where like it felt like the more cardio that I've done, it feels like I can recover faster between sets. And
yeah,
like, is that actually from the cardio? Who knows?
yeah,
Because it's not
exactly.
like the
Yeah.
cardio is a similar duration to like a set of whatever exercise. But so maybe it's just placebo or something. But or maybe it's you lose a little bit of weight and that's what actually helps you recover faster.
Or
Who
you
knows?
feel better because you're more active, so you sleep better, so you recover better. Like,
Yeah,
that's the thing. There's
a lot of stuff.
we general rule of thumb, we might not always know the reason or rationale for one thing, but if we know that it can help aid with other things potentially, we're going to do that. Like, we don't know why this affects our cardio and our squat, right? But if we're adding in all these other beneficial activities, we don't care too much which one works, because we know that they're all going to be beneficial, right? So I think that's,
It works, man.
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I think anything else that you feel like is we didn't touch upon. Any more memes? Did we forget some memes about? I think we did. We covered the Spanish one. We covered the morning routines. It's I
I'm sure
think,
there's some, but
just, yeah, for just in summary, I think, again, what does cardio mean for you? What are your goals? Make sure you're choosing tools that line up with those goals. Those are also going to change. It's going to be fluid. If you're more resistance training focused, interference effect might exist, but very easy to navigate. Just being smart with putting things, within distance of each other. I think to give like that flow chart that we're saying, ideally spread them across different days if you can. If not, second option. I won't even say second best because it just depends. Second option, it could be morning session, evening session. Third option could be priority modality, secondary modality after another. So if you want to prioritize resistance training, do your resistance training, then go for your walking after, right? There's like different hierarchies in theory, but also considering the goal, the practicality, the feasibility, the enjoyment factors. So if you're looking for some kind of pathway, think about those things and take note, adjust as you go. So,
And I guess one final thought that comes to mind on that too, of like what makes me feel even more confident that we can be pretty flexible and that it's pretty easy to work around that stuff is like interference effect. Like most people who are listening to this, or most people who are doing this for this purpose, like we're trying to maximize the training adaptations, right? Hypertrophy, strength, whatever. Like we're not. Most people are not also trying to maximize their VO2 max or their sprint time or their whatever, right? Like most people are using it as a tool for calorie expenditure. And so I'm like, like if the cardio is what we would consider like a low dose generally compared to what would elicit a cardio response. So like in the maybe an analogy of training might be, good. Like if you have found for yourself, you have a certain, let's say it's 15 sets a week for your back, leads to great growth. Awesome. And now you decide that you're going to start doing 5 sets a week. Like, would we expect that signal is as demanding of resources as the 15 is? Probably not. So I think about like with cardio, if we were trying to maximize both, there's probably a lot of interference stuff we want to be cautious of. But if the cardio is like a really low dose relative to what would actually elicit those things, man, I'm even less concerned, right? Like it's just like, I don't know. I have a hard time really thinking that which maybe would explain why you don't see so many of these bodybuilders in prep just having all their muscle fall off, right? Like I was kind of joking about that earlier, but I think there is something there. If it was a really strong effect, people would see it, and that it would be. It's not totally unexpected to lose a little bit of lean mass through a prep, but like some of that is just because you're dieting for a long time, and you're very, very lean, and it's just hard to hold on to muscle in that state. And so if the cardio was that much of a concern, we'd lose even more muscle. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That gives me even more peace of mind. Maybe I'm coping, but it's
not at all. That makes complete sense, and I think that's a really good way to look at it and to leave the listeners with like, hey, it's for most people, and most people, if not all, that are listening here, interference effect doesn't really nothing to be concerned about. If you're trying to maximize, think a little bit about it, but you'll be okay, more likely than not.
Yeah.
When we talk about cardio, it's mainly for helping us in our body composition goals. Many ways to approach it, but importantly, feasibility, enjoyment, not affecting negatively our resistance training. So keep that recovery in mind, and that you're going to be fine. So we're just trying to keep it simple more often than not, and we're always learning and we're always enjoying it. And yes, even enjoying the cardio, but because we're masking it with the anime. That's all
Yes.
I'll say. But as always, we all thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.